Alrighty, so I assume everyone can hear me. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me right now. If you go ahead, Aaron or Ilya, if anybody can just give me a wave if you can hear me. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are recording right now. I want to welcome everybody who's on and everybody in the future when they watch this to this webinar with NJ.com and their fantastic data reporting team who just put out the Force Report. Which is a comprehensive, unprecedented look at the data from police use of force incidents in New Jersey. So again, welcome. This is a sort of a joint thing right now. We want to use this as an opportunity to work with local reporters in New Jersey who want to use this database in their own reporting, as well as giving other people in the public a sort of insider look on not only what the database can be used for, but also a little bit of background information on how it came to be. And how you might use it in your own reporting. So just a quick couple of little housekeeping notes first. This is being recorded. This is being hosted by the Center for Cooperative Media. I am Joe Amditis. I'm Associate Director here at the Center. I'll give you a little bit about the Center first. We're a organization, a grant-funded organization out of Montclair State University. We work with a network of media and news and journalism partners in the state and beyond. To sort of grow and strengthen local news in New Jersey in particular. We also have a collaborative journalism program. You can find out all about this and more at our homepage, centerforcooperativemedia.org. And I encourage everybody here to sign up for our newsletter at bit.ly/CCM Roundup. That's where you get all of our future events, grant programs, and everything else that we do sort of compiled there and on our website. I will be in the comments section, or the chat, I guess, the chat here on Zoom. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Zoom, this is basically, you'll have a chat button down at the bottom of your screen. You should, or if you move your mouse at the bottom of the window, you should hover and you should see a chat area. If you don't see it right away, because there's other tools there, you can click the ... more menu. You can go ahead and chime in there. Because they're expecting, we already have a bunch of people. We're expecting around 50 people to join. I'm going to leave everybody muted for now. And unless Steve Sterling, who's going to be our host, has indicated, a special case, we're not going to unmute anybody. There are two different ways you can participate, though, that don't involve audio. One is obviously in the chat where I'll be there while Steve is talking. And two, if you actually click on Manage Participants or Participants, that button, you should see a menu come up. And at the bottom of that, you'll see little yes, no, go slower, go faster, and other little icons that you can indicate whether or not you agree, you don't agree, you'd like us to slow down, or you need a break or to repeat. So that, again, you can chat and you can type to me in the chat, or you can use those little nonverbal indicators to indicate either consensus or a special need that you have during this session. I don't think anybody's on the phone. If you are on the phone, I encourage you to get onto the Zoom app, download it, and watch, because this is going to be a somewhat visual presentation. Steve is going to be screen sharing and going through the database as well. If not, oh well. You can send your questions on Twitter to at Center Co-op Media, or at JS Amditis, or at S Sterling, and I'll be monitoring Twitter as well, just to see if we miss anybody who's unable to use the chat functions. Where to find the database, I posted in the chat, but you can find the full Force Report at force.nj.com. Obviously, I highly recommend folks to go on there and follow along and play around with that data set as we're doing this. You can also, you can find Steve Sterling on Twitter at ssterling, it's SSTIRLING. Obviously, NJ.com is NJDOTCOM. That's their Twitter. And at this point, I think that's pretty much everything. We'll just go ahead and jump right into it. Steve, if you are ready, I'm going to unmute you. You just let me know. And again, I'll be here. I'll jump in if necessary at any point to let you know what's going on in the chat, or if we need have some technical difficulties, you can always directly message me if that's the case. Steve, are you ready?
Sure am.
Okay, so you should be able to. This is new. We're trying to co-host from different locations with the Zoom conference. So I'm going to go ahead and take off my screen sharing. All right, and I will go ahead and pin your video for now so that we can go ahead. I'll mute myself and you go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. My name is Steve Sterling. I'm a data reporter at NJ Advanced Media, and I was one of the reporters on the Force Report, which we released last Thursday, the centerpiece of which is a database of the more than 72,000 police use of force forms that were filed between 2012 and 2016. So I guess I wanted to start by telling folks a little bit about what this data is and what it isn't, and then I'll go through our site. I'll go through different ways that we have to use the data, and how you can use it using our site and some of the statistics that we have there, and also what we have and what we will be offering in terms of downloadable data, so that you can do your own analysis, off of now and in the future. So just to be clear on some things that this database is not, this is a database of police use of force forms. It is not a database of police abuse. It is not a database of police brutality, of excessive force, or anything like that. Police in New Jersey, anytime they put their hands on somebody during the course of an arrest, are required to, by law, to fill out a use of force form explaining what they did, why they did it, who they did it to, and any host of demographics. I think we ended up with something more than 40 data points per use of force form, and we didn't even get all of them because they were sort of unstandardized. So, there's no real way of saying, just because an officer has, an abundance of use of force forms, you can't say that that person is a bad officer. You can't say that that person is, is doing something wrong. I mean, I think, the point of this is to say, this is something we should be monitoring. This is something that, you can certainly ask questions based off of this data, but don't draw any immediate conclusions without additional reporting. You want to, this is a great thing to sort of build off of. If you're looking at officers in individual departments, or if you're looking at individual departments, this is a resource to point you in the right direction, to sort of show some of the trends and show how they stack up against other departments and other officers in the state. But it does not draw any conclusion based on any one officer. You can drill down right down to the actual individual reports in our database, which can also be helpful if you're looking for specific incidents and stuff like that. But, just want to drive that home is, just because an officer uses force does not make them a bad cop. It is a normal part of policing. And we have no reason to believe that the vast majority of this database is anything but justifiable force used. So that said, a little bit about what we did and what we have here. Me and a team of, pretty much about 8 reporters, although there were, at different points, more than 3 dozen reporters in our newsroom involved in some capacity. When use of force forms were made part of the public record about two years ago, we began the process of requesting all of the use of force forms from every single police department in the state. We originally wanted to get 10 years worth of data, but it quickly became apparent that going back that far, departments were going to have trouble producing that information, or were going to, charge us an unsustainable amount of money for us to actually get it. So we settled on 5 years, from 2012 to 2016. Craig McCarthy, crazy man that he is, sent out 506 OPA requests, tracked them, and then brought the data team in to do something with that data. We have, some departments fought us on it, most did not. We were able to get all of this, information. And we spent the next 9 months to a year, I guess, digitizing this database, because it was mostly handwritten forms. We had to hire a company to help us do data input, and we had to audit that every day for about 5 months just to get everything into a single file to begin with, and then spent another few months cleaning it so that we had something that we were confident was accurate, legible, and representative of what we had received on largely paper from the police departments around the state. And the result is, is the sort of basis for all of our reporting in the force report. We released our first salvo of stories last Thursday, along with the database website, which was designed by Carla Estudio. We have many, many dozens more to come. This is very much an iterative project. There are so many stories in this database. I can't even sort of wrap my head around it sometimes. And we're going to be doing a lot, but we know that there is a ton in there that we can't get to. There are a totally immeasurable amount of local stories in here, and we want people to be able to use it. We also recognize that this is, the most comprehensive statewide database of police force in the country today. There's certainly a lot of interest from researchers, from people in other states who just have never had a chance to look at this sort of topic so closely and so comprehensively, using with more than 400 departments, across a state as diverse as New Jersey is. And another thing to be clear, a caveat: this is as good as the police department's provided information to us. We have come across, a number of cases that we have found that there are no use of force forms in there, even when force was clearly used. And we are trying to fill in those blanks, but we do not know what. We have every reason to believe this is the vast majority of the use of force forms, but we don't know what is missing, and we don't know how much of it there is. We're in the process of trying to figure that out now. Either because a department did not completely fulfill their OPA request to us, they lost forms or misplaced forms, or because an officer in other cases did not in fact fill out a form, there are incidents that are not here. And that's one thing that if you guys come across anything like that and want to let us know, absolutely reach out to us, and we'll make sure that we rectify that as soon as possible. I guess we can just start going through the data itself and what we have. So the force report, if you didn't see in our main data website is force.nj.com. And we can just start by going through that. This brings you to our sort of central page for stuff. Here you'll find a number of different things. You have your basic search functionality here. You can search by police department or by officer. It'll autofill to whatever it is that you're looking for in here, and that will bring you to individual pages that we'll go over in a minute. It has a little bit about what we did here. You will find all of our stories on the right-hand bar as they come out here. This is reporting that we've done off of this data. Some of the different things, there's frequently asked questions. There's a primer on what force is, as well as some of our major findings that we put out the other day. The credits, some of the larger stories that we've already put out to this point. So I can start with the statewide overview, which is basically a carbon copy of what you will see on any of the department page, just for the entire state. So as we go through this, I just want to give you a sense of what it is that we have here, how these things can be useful. So on every page you'll have, it gets your basic stats out of the way, your total uses of force, incidents per 1,000 arrests. For this, we use the FBI UCR data, which does track arrest data. We also connected this with census data, which you'll see, things compared to population demographics as well. And we hope maybe we can connect it to other data sources again in the future, but that's the source on all of this. One thing that you'll notice throughout these pages, we have these little plus signs. If you ever have any questions about how we did something or how these statistics were in fact calculated, we have one of these for virtually every different thing on the page. Some of them are more detailed than others, but it should give you, a general sense of how we arrived at those numbers. If you need to, if you're doing reporting off of this and you need to, lay that out there for people, it should be there on anything. Otherwise, you can always contact us with questions. All of the pages in this case, you get the department pages. This will give you a look at, different, a sortable look at all of the departments in the state and how many uses of force that they have. We use here, the total uses of force, which is just the raw number, but probably the better number to use is the incidents per 1,000 arrests, because, by nature, you know, the larger departments, your Newark, your Patterson, your Camden are going to have more uses of force because they have larger departments and more crime to deal with. So incidents per 1,000 arrests, generally speaking, is a better statistic to use if you're comparing department to department. So as you go down, you'll also be able to see how both officers and departments compare to other departments in the state. You're able to use this to compare, if you wanted to compare the statewide stuff to Absecon, for example, or really anywhere in the state. This can sort of really give you a sense of where a department stacks up in the state. And then you get into some basic stuff about the officers. For all of the department pages, you will be able to, actually, I'll just pull up one. We'll start going through Atlantic City. You will be able to get a sense of, where, in terms of the officers, where they stack up. This is where you'll find all of the officers in a department if you're not searching for them. You can search in any of these places to find a specific officer, off of that main page if you want to. But this will give you a sense of, the officers. We have a bunch of different demographics on them. If you click on their name, that'll take you to their page where you get even more information, as well as the individual incidents that officer was involved in. But for every department, we tell you about the average number of incidents per officer who used force over the 5 years. Incidents is an important thing here. The way that we did this is, there are situations where 4 or 5 officers can be involved in the same single use of force. And it's important to distinguish that. We distinguish that as a single use of force. That is an incident. On the officer pages, every single form is counted because that officer is involved in all of those incidents. But, when we're talking about on a department level, we count a single, even if 5 officers are involved in, with a single person, we count that as a single incident. It was just easier, and we thought a bit fairer to calculate things that way because we're really talking about the subjects in that case on the officer level. The subject is the object when you're talking about a departmental use of force. 5 officers use force on one subject in this one incident, as opposed to an officer's individual actions. We also compared this to each department's data to 3 other major systems. A lot of major departments have use of force, what are called early warning systems or something similar, that allow them to sort of flag an officer for review if they feel as though they have, if they've qualified under a certain thing to, just to have their record checked and to make sure that they're doing everything above board. Being under review, being flagged for review, again, it doesn't make you a bad officer. It just means that under the criteria set by a given department, your incidents are going to come under review. Now, New York City and Chicago are by the book. They would review any use of force that rises above the level of a punch and a kick, or a compliance hold, which is just a sort of restraint hold and the lowest level of force generally used. New York City is slightly different because they do not count pepper spray as one of those incidents. Chicago does. So that's why Chicago's numbers are slightly higher. Los Angeles uses a far more elaborate system where they monitor their officers in near real time, and if any across 14 different metrics, one of which is use of force. And if any of their officers at any given time is 3 standard deviations away from their their cohort, their peer group, their supervisors are immediately flagged so that their record can be reviewed to make sure that they get to the bottom of why that is happening. Maybe dictate training, or maybe there's a reasonable explanation for why an officer was involved in more stuff over time. So it's just different systems of doing things. You can find the explainer. This is one of the more robust ones. Basically what I just said here. Then we get into race and ethnicity. And to do these top 2 numbers, we use what's called an odds ratio, which basically means how much more likely a Black person is than a white person to find themselves in a specific incident. And the reason that we're only using that is because the only consistent race data that we really had here was black and white. We found particularly, the state inconsistently tracks Hispanic people. Hispanic is not a race, but a good portion of officers did mark people down as Hispanic under the race column. We see that a lot in other data sets, but it is totally inconsistent. So we couldn't draw any conclusions based on the Hispanic data that is already in there. We're going to try to do some analysis ourselves to see if we can suss out what that is. But whenever you're looking at, these sort of odds ratio stuff here, it's always black versus white. The black versus the majority white population, just because those are the most consistent things. We do have statistics for Asian here as well, and we put everything that we had for Hispanic, but again, we don't know how complete those things are, particularly because Hispanic isn't in fact a race. You're really referring to a language spoken under that terminology, and you're talking about ethnicity. So this is, again, to the best that we can do. We have, breakdowns by the subjects of force. We have the arrest data and the population data in here. That's an important distinction here. We wanted to calculate this a couple of different ways because it can show a couple of different things. Based on population, this is based on the resident population based on from the census of a given geography. So a black person in Atlantic City is 35% more likely, just as a person in that town, to have force used on them. We also calculated by arrests. One of the frequent criticisms we see from police about a statistic like the population statistic is, well, not all of the people that commit crimes are from our city. So we also did this by arrests, which puts everybody in the same situation as a baseline. It's like, this is only people based on everyone getting arrested, white, black, they all start from that point, they're being arrested. So this shows, when somebody is being arrested, a black person is more or less likely to have force used on them than a white person. Again, if you look at our stories, you find that there is certainly this disparity more often than not. So moving on, we have where we have these breakdowns, subjects of force versus officers using force. Now, not every department in the state tracks the race of the officers that are making the reports themselves and are using force. But wherever we do have it, we do provide that information. It's not complete, so we don't have a ton of statewide, information on this. We probably recommend doing that kind of analysis yourself, just because, for example, the state police doesn't track that, and they are, as an organization, arrest more people by far than any other police agency in the state. So getting further down, we also have a breakdown by the type of force used. One thing we want to point out here, we have it all going down in pretty much ascending order of severity. Compliance hold is the lowest level of force. It is a restraint hold. We have explainers to say what that is, and what we consider all of these things. Again, the plus signs are your friend. One thing we want to be clear on, because this comes up a lot, and we've seen, police chiefs in particular misstating these statistics, is, these statistics will often add up to more than 100%. Because you can use more than one type of force in an individual incident. So we've seen, chiefs, saying, I think the Hoboken chief in particular is like, oh, well, most of my department uses, compliance holds, and is like, it's 90% or something like that. It's like, yes, that's true. But if you take compliance holds out, and compliance hold, it's still about 53% of the time officers are using more than a compliance hold. It's just that you can use a compliance hold and also hit somebody with a baton. You can shoot somebody, those things are cumulative on top of each other in this. So we're working on ways to sort of separate that out and sort of make that clear, because it's difficult to separate them when people use multiple types of force. Maybe multiple officers use different types of force in a single incident. We want to track that. But since compliance holds are the sort of standard baseline, we're going to try to figure out a way to better suss that out. But just definitely understand that these numbers can add up to more than 100% for that reason. You see that in this department, 41% include hands and fists, as well as a compliance hold, which is and compliance holds are 82% of the time. That's already over 120%. So it's something to keep in mind when you're doing this. We have the comparisons to the state on all of these things here. We also have the sort of flip side for that, which is the listed reason for force that an officer marks down on the form. The most common one is resisting arrest. You will say that in most departments in the state. But you also have threaten or attack with different objects, with a car, actually physically firing a gun at an officer. Everything that they had that we could sort of categorize and standardize. There were a lot of different ones. There's one guy that attacked an officer with a 6-pack of beer. I think we didn't really know how to categorize. I think we probably, if there was one for blunt object, maybe we put it in there. But anything that we can standardize, we put into those columns. We also have statistics on injuries for every department in the state, and then at the bottom of the department page, you will find all of the individual reports for a department. And on these, you can click on the plus sign again, because they are your friend, and get the more information on each incident there. You get summaries of each of these on each of the officer pages as you go through. So we'll go and take a look at Scott Sendrick's page to give you a quick sense of the officer pages. Scott Sendrick, weapons to the officer, has more uses of force total than any officer in the state. So we'll use him as an example here. Where we have basic demographics on every officer when you're looking at their page. Sometimes it's not available, but where it is, we do list this sort of thing. And you'll see a lot of the same statistics just boiled down to an officer level. So it's a different way to look at things. You have the average incidents per year, the department average, and you'll be able to compare this to and see a graph of how that stacks up to other officers in the department. As Mr. Sendrick was the tops in the state, you will see he kind of hovers above, for most times. You also get some of the other officers in his department if you want to do a comparison. And then you have breakdowns, a lot of the same breakdowns that you saw for the department level on the officer level is, racially, what's the race of the subjects that he is applying force to, he or she is applying force to. Again, the same thing with Hispanic applies. It is as complete as they made it. And you go down into the types of force, and also the I guess we don't have reasons for force on here, but and then you have that officer's incidents. So it may be, if you're looking at a specific thing, it might be easier to come off of these pages and look at an officer's specific stuff, because if you're looking at a department, you're going to get, in the case of Atlantic City, more than 2,000 separate incidents. That's basically a quick tour of what we have available. We tried to make this, sort of as comprehensible as possible, and as sort of straightforward as possible. So if people wanted to use this for day-to-day reporting, if they're reporting off of, for example, a police involved shooting, and they get the name of the officer that was involved and want to use this data, it's an easy way to do it. It's also, a way to compare departments pretty easily, to report off of a specific town and start doing an analysis locally of, what a specific department and how they use force compared to other departments in the state or other departments nearby. And that's another thing I should mention. I believe we took that out. Yeah, I guess we took that out. I thought we had similar departments, but must have been stripped out. But yeah, so that is one way to look at our data. We are planning on releasing the full data set. We, at this point, it looks like we will be doing that through ProPublica. I'm not sure if there's, but in the near future, we'll be releasing it through ProPublica. There will be, a fee associated with that, but for journalists, for academics, it will be substantially lower, and certainly very affordable compared to the commercial license for this data. That's just a means of, helping us recoup some of the expenses of this, but also, have a sense of who it is that's downloading this information. ProPublica has a great record for hosting that sort of thing. But in the meantime, we are hosting all of our aggregate data for free on data.world, which is a wonderful website that I can't speak more highly of. It's basically a data social network. And we've been doing work off of this for quite a while now, and posting a lot of our different data sets that we use and we report off of here. They're all downloadable. It's all shareable. If you enjoy using SQL, you can actually run SQL queries within the application itself. And they have great space for documentation and stuff like that. But more than that, the website that I just went through is actually hosted on, the data is hosted on data.world, and we just hit their API off of it. So it is really, if you're trying to build something like this, they were great in terms of support. They were great in terms of, helping us out with this. And it's just a neat place to store data and to find other data sets. They have a lot of cool applications for connecting data that you put up there to other data sets that are available in the community and stuff like that. So I'd urge you to check it out, especially if you want to download our department data, which is what is currently available. It is available for free. This courtesy of Erin Potenko, who I believe is on the line down here. She compiled all of this, and this is, basically a spreadsheet of all of the department level data that we went through. It'll allow you to sort of more easily compare any of the police departments in the state police to other departments in the state, if you want to do that sort of analysis en masse, rather than doing single department to single department. So if you go to data.world /nj.com with the dot actually spelled out, that is our data page. I can put this in the chat as well before we go. And then it's use of force department data. There's some pretty detailed methodology and sort of explanation, a data dictionary for what all of the things are. A lot of these explainers, you see what are the different levels of force, the early warning systems. A lot of that is explained on the site. It's again here. It's just something, it's a good research to have as linked to our full methodology on, how we collected this, how we've cleaned it, and how we continue to clean it. But you can get the actual physical data set here as well. It's just, so if you go up here, you can actually just download it. That should download with the documentation with it too, but otherwise it is right here on the website. I believe it downloads the zip. I'm not 100% sure.
Steve, Ilya had a question. Does this data set include officers who are no longer active duty?
So this data set includes officers, any officer that had a use of force incident from 2012 to 2016. So if they are no longer active, yes, they are in there. By the same token, if they became active in 2013, they're not going to have any forms for 2012, but they will be in there for the remainder of it. So it is every officer that filed a form during that period. If they are no longer active, if they didn't, and they retired in 2011, they won't be in this database because that's as far back as we could get. So it is all to that individual time period, 2012 to 2016. With the hope, and we're not sure how this is going to work out. It sort of depends a lot on the AG that will be able to begin adding to this on the end. adding 2017, 2018, et cetera. There is a lag in this data, as there is with a lot of state data. So there will always be a gap there. But yeah, it's all specific to that time period. If you're interested in the full data set, the full, every incident, every form data set, please stay tuned. I believe there's an email sign up somewhere on the force.nj.com website to get a notification. We're still building out the sort of document. Oh yeah, there it is. Get our data. It's at the bottom of the page. When you can sign up to get more info, and once we do go live with that and build out the full documentation and stuff like that, you can stay on top of that. So that's right down at the bottom of the page, force.nj.com, get our data.
What about when it comes to localizing this kind of thing? What do you recommend, or do you have anything that you guys have been working on when it comes to working with local reporters and how they can take this data set and either work with you or other data reporters at NJ Advance or on their own to bring this to their to localize this?
I mean, my line is always open. I've reached out to a couple of people that I know. I live in Maplewood, so the Village Green. I've been, I sent notes to them being like, hey, we've got this thing coming out. This is how it can be useful to you. And the thing is like we can't possibly cover all of the stories that are in this database. There's 468 municipal police departments. There's probably stuff worth questioning in every single one of them. We just can't, we're inevitably, there's only 8 of us. We're inevitably going to miss things. We're not going to, be able to get to certain things. And this, fresh eyes always helps. So if another reporter can come in and just look at even the department level pages and be like, huh, that's weird. We would encourage anybody to report off of this. Our big goal here is just to make this data public, make this data transparent, and hopefully encourage the state to begin publishing this on their own. By all means, if you, if you can find stories in here, we want you to do that. And if you have questions about anything in the database, you can email me or anybody else on the data team. There are now 6 of us at NJ Advance. You can email Craig McCarthy or Sean Sullivan, who are the other 2 main reporters on this project. We're all about helping other organizations sort of get their footing with this, and and reporting out stuff that we didn't see, because we have all of these stories planned, and that's based on spending our time with the data over the past couple of months. But that's just what jumped out to us. We're looking at a lot of statewide trends, and we're drilling into some municipalities where where we saw outliers were based off of the topics that we were looking at. But it's not the type of thing, any local reporter that is working, a beat reporter that's working in a town or county, they know the issues in these towns better than we do. We were coming at this from a statewide level. I know if I was still a beat reporter in Somerset County or Middlesex County, that I would probably pick up on stories that I'm not seeing now, which is why we think it's so important for other local reporters to utilize this database. We're encouraging you to beat us on those stories. We would certainly love it if you cited where the data came from, but that's a big part of our mission as a data team at NJ Advance, is to sort of make things better for journalists around the state, make things better for the public in terms of what is available and what is people's fingertips, and make it easy to use. I don't really have anything else. We're certainly open to questions if anybody has specific things that they want to ask, or you can either go through Joe in the chat and he'll unmute you, or he'll just send along the question. But by all means, ask away.
Let's try this. In your menu, you can go ahead and click participants, and you'll see those nonverbal. If you want to click the raise your hand, or click any one of those, and I'll just I'll unmute you individually and call you out, and you can ask your question. I just want to avoid a lot of chaos from everybody unmuting at once. If you can't find those buttons or whatever, just just post something in the chat and I'll unmute you and cue you in. Go ahead. All right, we got Matt Hirsch. We'll start with you. Go ahead.
Hey, Stephen. Hey, Joe. Thank you. This is just an incredible piece of data, but it's an incredible resource. Thank you for putting this together and walking us through this. You may have addressed this, and I'm sorry, I'm home with my daughter today who's sick. But it would be useful if we were able to do side-by-side comparisons with towns of similar demographic size, etc. Will that be a feature that's forthcoming?
I think, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to go back and get, last couple of weeks have been kind of crazy. We did have in the data set similar towns that you could sort of jump to really quickly.
Right.
But I guess that was sort of taken out. But I believe in the department level file that's on data.world, it does still include those things in there. But there are things like if you have the full file, it's a lot easier to take a look at sort of and sort by number of arrests in a department or population of the city that they cover, or the total number of uses of force. It's a lot easier to find sort of a peer group that way by doing it, and that's certainly I would recommend downloading the use of force department data off of data.world to do that sort of thing. It's going to be a lot easier to do that. You don't get the the charts and graphs and stuff, but as a starting point, that'll at least get you closer to sort of getting those similar demographics that you're looking for comparison.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? What else? Raise those hands. Let's see them, or pop into the chat. Seeing none at the moment, we'll keep it open, obviously. In the meantime, what about visualization? Is anybody working on additional visualizations, Steve, and other ways to display and present this data that maybe either need help on or you want to tell us about?
Yeah, I mean, we have a bunch. I know Aaron, who's in here, who's working on some cool maps with this data. All of our stories will have visualizations attached to them. But I think that's another one of those things. If you look at the department level data and you can map something, or you want to use it to chart things, that's a great way to see things that perhaps you're not seeing. I know that that came up yesterday with some of the maps that Aaron was showing me. I was sort of seeing it visually displayed over geography gives you a totally different perspective on things. So we'd certainly encourage people to try to do that. We will help anybody that wants to do that sort of thing to connect it to, I'm not sure if the codes are in there, but we can help connect it to census codes if they are not already in there, which will allow you to map it a little bit easier. Charts, obviously, you can do sort of without any of that geographical information. Certainly be on the lookout. We'll have this massive, super amazing, cool visualization coming from our newest reporter, Yan Wu, who I believe that's going to be out before the end of the year. There's definitely a lot being worked on here, and we're happy to help anybody who wants to do a type of visualization, local or statewide, for doing that for this type of data, because it can be super helpful.
Yeah, there we go. While we're waiting for more questions, can you talk about just anything that jumped out to you? Anything else that sort of even little things that you didn't expect during this project, either through the process of building the database or reporting it out, or just like looking at the data itself?
Things that I didn't expect. I think that we sort of noted in our reporting is it was surprising at where the largest pockets of force were. I mean, you have a lot of these sort of towns that are known as sort of liberal and progressive enclaves. Your Maplewoods, your Montclairs, places like that. That's where the rates of force were actually the highest. That's some of those towns like South Orange is where you're seeing some of the biggest racial disparities. A lot of these towns, that, ended up, for lack of a better word, on the wrong side of the ledger in different categories were sort of surprising. The racial disparities, it wasn't surprising that they're there, but, in some cases, how extreme they are. That's sort of the really remarkable thing, I think, throughout this process is if you sort of look at everything from a statewide perspective, things don't really look that amiss. I think there's force is used in about 3% of arrests statewide, which is pretty much what we know to be average or normal for the nation. There's nothing that jumps out at you there. It's not until you look at these individual departments that you really get a clear picture of how different policing is in terms of use of force from town to town. And officer to officer. I mean, there are just patterns that are just, like, it's crazy how two departments that are right next to each other could be policing an area completely differently. And when you dig through these demographics, everything is different. Some departments use pepper spray a lot more than other departments. Some officers use pepper spray a lot more than other officers. There are a lot of surprises at every turn once you get past that initial level and you start looking at this on a local level. This is really a local database. And that's why we're sort of emphasizing that so much, is because there's so much there. And I feel like I get surprised by something every day when I'm going through this, for that reason.
So the chat here has some questions. Will the full data file have more information on individual incidents? I'm particularly interested in whether I could use the data to look at use of force by police officers in schools.
That's something that I believe the full data set will have the address of the incident where it occurred. I think we will probably end up anonymizing the subject data, but I think we will include the address of where the incident occurred. But some of that remains to be worked out in what we are going to release and what we're going to redact. But unfortunately, they don't say whether or not a school is involved. I know that that's something that that's been brought up, and we're going to try to work on that, I think, and try to get, some of that information out there. We may release slices of this data moving forward based on requests and things like that. But, the addresses of schools in the state are certainly public record. So I believe you would be able to do that based on the information that we release if you knew the address of the incident that occurred. One of the other things that you can do is with the full data set will be to break things down by the age of the subject, which will also give you a clear indication. If you're looking for things that are occurring near high schools, if you filter for, 18 and under, that's going to give you a head start on that more than likely. So there are a couple ways that you can do that. The short answer should be, yes, I think you will be able to sort of dig into that level. May not be ready. There's not going to be like a column that says school, but it's something that you should be able to get at with a little work.
We got one from Alex here. How did you go about managing a project this big? Was there a certain project management software or styles like Agile? I got overwhelmed just reading through the methodology.
Yeah, I have nightmares every time I look at it. It's a lot of, just staying diligent and making sure that you're a step ahead of, what it is that you're doing next. I mean, we had a general framework of what we wanted to do, but going day by day was really the only thing that we can do. Not getting ahead of ourselves, not getting, too in the weeds. That was crucial. It's not easy because a lot of the early work was not fun. Certainly not, arguing with 500 plus municipal clerks on getting the data in the first place, and then the cleaning, the digitizing and the cleaning of this data had to be a day-by-day thing. For 5 months, basically, we took 750 forms a day that were sent to this company. They input the data, and we had to audit them every day, and that was the height of tedium. You did not want to do that every day, but it was important to have a team for that. That's the most crucial thing, is you have to have people that you can rely on to support each other, to sort of share the burden of that stuff. because that's where, projects like this are going to fail, is the sort of the grunt work that goes into it, and that is necessary to, unfortunately, to do some of these things, because, something like use of force data is not digital in the state of New Jersey in 2018. We're working off of handwritten forms. The same thing goes to cleaning the data afterwards, is just sort of making sure that we are keeping track of every little thing we do. Once we had a database, we always only had one master file, and anytime any significant change was found or an error was found, we would swap out that master file, we would date it, we would maintain the original master file so that we could practice version control, and we could go back if we later found a mistake. That was pretty key to all of this, but it was just sort of, logging every step of the way, making sure you knew what you did and why you were doing it, writing all that stuff down, and, staying sort of in the moment of what you could do that day, because, you would get overwhelmed in an instant. That's like, if you look at the methodology and the whole thing, it sort of makes your head spin. But if you're just tackling these tasks day by day as they come up and making sure that you're documenting everything that you're doing, it becomes a lot easier to sort of to manage. And that's really how we did this without, very nearly going insane. As I'm sure anybody on this project can attest to. It's not always easy, but it's totally doable if you have a team, if you have, people that you can rely on to help you, to lift you up when you're down. Which is another thing that's important, because you will get frustrated. You will feel like you're on dead ends all the time. But it's teamwork, and it's staying in the moment as you can, understanding that you have a goal and there is light eventually at the end of the tunnel. That's the best I can tell you.
So we have about 4 minutes left. I got two questions that I want to get to. One of them is sort of a combined question between Ilya and myself. I've seen a lot of the response, particularly in my favorite spot, the NewJersey.com or NJ.com comments section, that paints this sort of anti-cop. But I've also seen a response from New Jersey's top cop, or at least one of them. What was it like, and what kind of, did you get pushback from the departments? What was it like dealing with the actual police departments in this, and how willing were they to go along with it? And then sort of you can answer this one first. Is there any plans to have this be a living database and update it with new force reports? Say that real quick. That's a short answer, and then you can get into the longer one.
The short answer on that is maybe. We sure like the state to start doing that on their own. But it's something that's sort of it's going to be a day by day thing. We don't know what the state is going to do as a result of this. The Attorney General has promised reforms, and he wants to make this a public facing digital database that's accessible easily. So we will see what he does. But we've already talked about different possibilities for sort of keeping this up in the future. So we'll just sort of see how that goes. In terms of pushback, it really varies place to place. It varies police officer to police officer. We have some chiefs that have been great in talking to them. I've had great conversations with different police officers around the state. Even plenty that I differ in opinion of and are critical of what we did here. But I've had constructive conversation, and I've had a whole bunch of people yell at me, and as has every person that was involved in this project. And there are people that don't like what we did, that think it's anti-cop, but that's not what this is about, and we're very clear on that throughout every bit of reporting this project. This isn't about good cops and bad cops. This is about a system that was designed to be tracked and isn't being tracked. So we are doing that work for them and raising questions about what we found in that data. It's not as if we're out to get anybody. And as we've continuously pointed out, the tracking and the maintaining of this and the reviewing of this, as the state had initially outlined that they wanted to do, that helps protect both police officers and the public. Because if you're able to intervene with an officer that's having an issue and do training or get him or her help, maybe they're dealing with outside issues or something like that is sort of affecting their work. If you can intervene and do something about that, that's going to protect that officer's safety as well. So there's always it's always been told to me that if you make everybody happy, if you do something like this, you're not doing your job as a journalist. That That certainly couldn't be more true for this.
So we got one, I think we have 1 minute. We have one more question here from Matt Hirsch. I'm going to go and unmute you. Matt, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Joe. And I thank you for indulging me. I just wanted to follow up, Stephen, on something that you said about how this data is read. Is it anti-cop or is it pro-cop? You know, so I live in one of those liberal small towns in Highland Park that is vastly disproportionate when it comes to enforcement. I think we were 10 times as high use of force against black residents or black subjects as white. Couple things, you know, one of the things is that I guess you go by demographic, but I don't know if your data actually produces whether the use of force was a resident or a non-resident. Do you get that deep, or is that
No, we're not able to, and that's one of the reasons why we sort of included as much as it. You know, this is as far as we can go based on the data available. You know, one of the criticisms from the PBA is like, well, why didn't you include this, and this? It's like, well, it's because it's not public record. You know, this is really as far as we can get, and that's why we're sort of saying that, you know, you've got to dig deeper there. You know, you have to find and engage with a police department in an individual town and find out, you know, why these numbers might be off. You know, there may be reasons for it. Policing, as I said, is very different from town to town. You know, it's important to have that sort of institutional voice as part of this. I don't think anybody should be going about looking at the stuff without engaging, you know, the department themselves and the officers themselves, because, you know, that's an important perspective, because there are things that we can't get to just because, you know, the police in the state of New Jersey don't make it available to us.
right? And just in terms of that, it's just, I mean, it has the potential to be a terrific policy driver. So it's very useful.
That's the hope. We hope this will become easier for everybody to look at, because we think it's an important public service and it's important data set for people to have.
All righty, we are now at 2 o'clock. We'll let Steve get back to, and Aaron and everybody else from NJ.com's here. Thank you guys so much for this, not just the work itself, but for taking time out of the day, especially in the lead up to the holidays, to talk with us about this. For those of you who are on the call who want to follow up and want to do more, you can reach out to myself and the Center for Cooperative Media at info@njnewscommons.org or info@centerforcooperativemedia.org. or on Twitter at Center Co-op Media. You can also find Steve Sterling on Twitter at @ssterling, that's at STIRLING, or NJ.com spelled out on Twitter as well. Steve, do you want to, any parting words where they can learn more or what they should do?
No. I mean, you know, obviously keep a close eye on our coverage. You know, hopefully we can answer some of the questions that you have, and you know, and by all means, reach out to any of us. You know, on the data team, it's me, Carla Escudillo, Aaron Patenko, who's on the line now, Disha, Yan, Blake Nelson. We are a robust team now. We're very grateful for that, but you know, we want to help people use this. Craig McCarthy and Sean Sullivan are two other reporters, the investigative reporters that were on this project as well. We're all available. We're you know, all on Twitter. We're all you know, talking about this. So reach out if you have questions. If there's things that we can help you with, we want to try to help you with it. So you know, please use this. Please, you know, find stories that we didn't beat us. That's what we want to see here.
All righty. Well, thank you so much to everybody who joined. I'm going to be posting the video recording of this session to the Center for Cooperative Media's YouTube channel, and I'll be sharing it on all our other things as well as soon as that's done exporting, and I do a little light editing for time. Thank you all so much for joining us. And again, don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter so you can learn about more of these webinars and trainings and stuff that we offer here. And thank you again to NJ.com for partnering and agreeing to work so collaboratively on this and in future endeavors related to this database and other stories. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, everyone.